Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I've been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars every single year since August 2019. And we are here to march through another offseason together. As always, you can always follow our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground Jaguars coverage on social media such as Facebook and Twitter by following us at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about continuing our rookie impact rankings. So far, doing it from number 9 to number 1. It's very clear who number 1 is, but the rest of it's at least a very good debate. Number 9, we had Jonah Monheim. Number 8, Jalen McLeod. And number 7, we have linebacker Jack Kaiser, who, you can go back and listen to our previous episode on that. I'm a big fan of Jack Kaiser in his game, going back and looking at his tape. And there's definite talent there and a definite path to starting one day moving forward. But right now, just how the room is set up, you can listen to my rationale why he's number 7. Today, we are going to talk about number 6. And for me, number 6 is Navy safety Rayuan Lane III. Now, I obviously, Lane had a fantastic career at Navy. Was one of the best defenders there over the last several years. I think he's the highest Navy defender to be picked in the draft in decades. He's somebody who was a key special teamer, but tons of experience in college, tons of production as well. I believe out of all safeties in this draft, he was top 2 or 3 in terms of turnovers produced, takeaways produced in his career. Lots of forced fumbles, lots of ball production. I was a big fan of the Lane pick for one reason, and that reason is, I know I definitely harp on it, but special teams. Special teams is incredibly key to the NFL, to the foundation of every single team. And one area the Jaguars have shined, and I've really done a good job of developing guys over the years, has been the special teams units. I personally think Heath Farwell is one of the best, special teams coaches in the NFL. I thought it was a very wise move by Liam Cohen and, the Jaguars' entire, building to keep Heath Farwell, because obviously, even Heath Farwell said, it was shown to him that ownership wanted him to stay here. When ownership wants a special teams coach to stay, that's a pretty good indication of how, the franchise feels about him and how he's done, his job. And I think it perfectly lines up with what we've seen from Heath Farwell. And a big thing about special teams is even when you produce like absolute studs on special teams, it's going to keep changing every year. And eventually you're going to have to say goodbye to some guys. And I'm not saying necessarily, this is a sign of Jaguars are saying goodbye to whomever. But the reality of it is 2 of the Jaguars' best special teamers, Daniel Thomas and Andrew Wingard, are both in contract years. We've already seen the Jaguars, walk away from Caleb Johnson, who had an expiring contract. He was a key special teamer. I walked away from Tim Jones, who was a key special teamer. So they had to add more guys. And Farwell himself said this after, Cohen's staff was introduced, that, they're going to have to lean on some rookies, whether that's draft picks, undrafted rookies, as the special teams roster continues to churn every year. And when they selected Lane, that was my immediate thought, was that, yes, he's a safety, and yes, he'll into that room as some depth, obviously bring a lot of good qualities to the room in terms of, like I said, he has a lot of good ball production, a lot of forced fumbles, really sound tackler. But where I think he'll have the most immediate impact, and why I have him over a guy like Jack Kaiser and over a guy like Jalen McLeod, is while he's a backup, and I don't think there's a clear path to him playing on defense in 2025, the safety room, obviously Eric Murray, I think Darnell Savage, will factor into there. You have Caleb Ransaw. There's a lot of, then Andrew Wingard. You also have Daniel Thomas. You have some veterans at that position, along with a high draft pick. So I'm not sure necessarily there's a path to him making a big role on defense, even though, you can see as he continues to develop, stuff like that, if maybe that can happen one day. But on special teams, I think he has, and I know I tend to sometimes be hyperbolic, or I call my shots a little too big. And I own that. But I think he has the potential to be the best special teamer on the Jaguars, if not one of the best special teamers in the league. Watching him at rookie minicamp, and I know it's rookie minicamp, they're in shorts and helmets, their very first practices. It's like high schoolers going from junior high to high school, and that's their very first practice, and they're like, whoa, this is a whole new world. I understand all of that. But watching them do special teams drills at rookie minicamp, it was Lane, and then there was a big gap, and then there was everybody else, even guys who are good special teamers and projecting to be good special teamers at the next level. The speed, the violence, the fundamentals. He just looks like he's going to be an absolute core piece of what they do on special teams. Whether that's coverage, whether that's blocking, I'm not sure. But I think he will have a very clear role on Heath Farwell's units. And I think that's a pick that, should excite a guy like Heath Farwell. Like, you have a guy like this under rookie contract for the next 4 years. He just excels as a special teamer. He was called by a lot of people, the best special team player in the draft, for those kind of traits, for the fact that he was able to, produce what he did at Navy and, what he brings to the table, etc. As a tackler, as an instinctive player, it's just absolutely fantastic. And I think he's a player who very early on, he can shine and rolls even as a gunner. Here's what Dane Brugler said about him, in the Beast, etc. He said, overall, Lane needs to improve his reliability finishing tackles, but his fluid athleticism and football IQ are NFL quality traits. His special teams impact as a gunner can really separate him on draft boards and in training camp. And he had him in the 6th round, exactly where he went. So, at 23 career special teams tackles, according to Brugler. One, NFL scout, according to Brugler, said coaches say he's never even missed a practice. He finished his career with 43 straight starts. These are the kind of traits it seems like, the Jaguars are targeting. Guys with a lot of experience, a lot of durability, a lot of production, and multiple people, I talked to who watch a lot more in terms of volume of prospects than me, said to me during the process that Lane was one of the best special teamers in the draft. And I think that's who the Jaguars got. Now, I know that's big praise for a 6th round pick, but if you're looking specifically at the impact he can make, I think that's why he's up there. Now, again, there's an argument to make that there's not much room, on the safety depth chart. And I'm really interested to see how the safety depth chart does play out. I'm interested to see who exactly starts, because you have several players. I didn't even mention Antonio Johnson earlier. That's another guy probably ahead of Lane on the depth chart. You have, Johnson obviously has starting experience. You took Caleb Ransaw in the 3rd round. They've said they're going to lean on rookies, so you would expect, he plays sooner rather than later. You obviously have Darnell Savage who can play that role. Eric Murray, I think, you can assume he's one of the free agents. I think there's probably 4 of them that look like guarantee starters just because of what they signed to. And I'd say 5. It's him, De'Ami Brown, Jordan Lewis, and then, Hainsey and McCary. So it's clear to me that safety, it's going to be a hard position to find snaps at this year. I'm interested, if Ransaw starts. Maybe he doesn't. There's definite guys, several others who have starting experience in that room. So when you look at Lane, I think the totality of his impact is more likely than not on special teams. It's just I think he can make such an impact on special teams. He can be a special gunner in the NFL that I think he's ahead of some of the other, picks, even ahead of Jack Kaiser, who they took 2 rounds in front of Lane. And I can definitely see that argument that a lot of times, looking in terms of rookie impact, you look at where they took a player. For me, some of that's getting thrown out some in the series. I mean, the last player they picked, we're through, 4 picks, and he hasn't been an option yet. And LaQuint Allen. So it's definitely something, I'm factoring to an extent, but I'm looking more at the rest of the room and, really what the depth chart looks like as it has potential for them to make an impact, whether on offense, defense, or special teams. And special teams is exactly where I expect Lane to make an impact in 2025. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Please remember you can find us at the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms. Please give us a review, a follow, subscription, and you can also find all of our videos, such as our podcast, press conferences, interviews, etc., at Sports Videos on SI.